Before we get started, if you like what we do here, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really does help us out.
Absolutely.
Okay, so today we're tackling some pretty intense stuff that you sent our way a whole bunch on this Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act of 2025,
Right.
also known as HR 28.
Yeah, this one's causing a lot of debate everywhere,
It really is.
nationwide, and we're here to kind of help you make sense of it all.
Yeah, cut through the noise.
Exactly. You gave us a lot to work with, too. We have opinions from both sides, some really interesting legal analysis, and even a personal letter from a congressman, which is
Wow.
very strongly worded.
Okay, so by the end of this, you'll have the facts.
Right.
No spin, no hype, just the arguments straight from these sources so you can, decide what you think.
Absolutely.
So should we jump right into the bill itself, HR 28?
Yeah, I think that's a good place to start.
Okay, let's get into the nitty-gritty. Then we can look at, all the arguments and opinions surrounding it.
Sounds good. So this bill, it amends Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972 by adding a new section.
Okay.
And that section says, and I'm quoting here, "It shall be a violation of subsection A for a recipient of federal financial assistance who operates, sponsors, or facilitates athletic programs or activities to permit a person whose sex is male to participate in an athletic program or activity that is designated for women or girls."
So that's pretty clear. But I'm guessing the real controversy isn't about who can play. It's about how they define sex, right?
Yeah, you got it. That's the heart of the issue. HR 28 says, and again I'm quoting, "For the purposes of this subsection, sex shall be recognized based solely on a person's reproductive biology and genetics at birth."
So basically this bill is saying it's about biological sex, not gender identity.
Right.
I can see why this is causing such a stir.
Yeah, it's a direct challenge to how a lot of courts and institutions have been interpreting gender, recently.
So speaking of challenges, this bill did pass the House, but it was a super close vote, right?
Yeah, it was a close one, 218 to 206.
Wow. And only one representative didn't vote one way or the other.
Yeah, just highlights how divided this issue is, even lawmakers.
It's not a simple issue for sure.
No, it's not, and now it goes to the Senate, and we'll see what they do.
Okay, so let's dive into the arguments a bit.
Yeah.
Why do some people think this bill is so important?
Well, a lot of the support, especially from people with more conservative viewpoints, it comes down to what they see as fairness in women's sports.
Okay.
They argue that biological males just generally have physical advantages like
Right.
muscle mass, bone density, things like that.
Yeah, so they're worried that if trans girls are allowed to compete in girls' sports,
Yeah,
it's not a level playing field.
exactly. And they say it goes against the whole point of Title IX, which was all about equal opportunity for women in athletics.
Mm-hmm.
The Alliance Defending Freedom, for example, they've been very vocal about this.
Yeah, I've seen some of their statements. They said girls shouldn't be spectators in their own sports.
Right. And they're saying allowing trans girls to compete could destroy fair competition and erase women's athletic prospects. Pretty strong words.
Yeah, but of course, there's a whole other side to this, and a lot of people have some serious problems with HR 28.
Definitely.
What are their main concerns?
Well, folks who oppose the bill, often those with more liberal views, they see it as just straight up discrimination against transgender students.
Mm-hmm.
They say it reinforces these harmful stereotypes and prevents trans girls from really being a part of school life.
Yeah, and their concerns go beyond just athletes, right?
Absolutely. They worry about any girl who doesn't fit, traditional gender norms.
Yeah, being targeted, harassed.
Exactly. And there's this big concern about the bill's language, about reproductive biology and genetics, that it could lead to invasive questioning or even like medical exams.
Wow.
Just to confirm a student's gender.
That's a bit unsettling to think about.
It is. And Congressman Bobby Scott, he's a Democrat from Virginia.
Hmm.
He was really outspoken about this. He called HR 28 the Child Predator Empowerment Act.
Yeah, his letter was pretty powerful.
Oh, yeah.
He's really worried about, these young girls being subjected to these humiliating inspections, and then who gets to actually do those inspections.
Right. He says those decisions should be left up to the schools, sports organizations, and parents.
Yeah.
Not the government.
So for him, this is about protecting all girls, not just about, competition.
Exactly. He thinks this is just fueling these culture wars, not actually helping students in schools.
Okay, so we've got these two very different sides, but there's another group raising concerns about HR 28, and that's InterASET, this advocacy group for intersex people.
Yeah, they bring up an important perspective that I think often gets lost in this whole debate.
To be honest, I'm not super familiar with the term intersex. Can you explain that a bit?
Sure, intersex is a term for people who are born with variations in their sex characteristics.
Okay.
It could be their chromosomes, genitals. internal organs, hormone levels. So
Mhm.
basically, their biology doesn't fit neatly into male or female.
Got it. So how does this relate to HR 28?
Well, InterSD says the bill's whole focus on reproductive biology and genetics at birth, it completely ignores intersex people.
Okay.
And they say this could actually exclude intersex girls from participating in sports with other girls.
So even though the bill is supposed to be about protecting women's sports, it might actually end up harming another group of girls.
That's their argument. They say the bill's definition of sex is so narrow, it could lead to some really difficult situations for intersex students.
They use this hypothetical student named Jane as an example, right?
Yeah, they describe Jane as being assigned female at birth.
Mhm.
She identifies as a girl and, physically she has the typical characteristics of a female body.
Okay.
But she also has internal tests and XY chromosomes.
So under this bill's strict definition, it sounds like Jane's eligibility to play on a girl's team could be questioned.
Ryan, InterSD asks some tough questions like, how would they even enforce the bill in a case like Jane's?
Mm-hmm.
Would she be subjected to these, invasive medical tests? Who gets to decide if she's female enough?
It sounds like they're really concerned about potential discrimination and violation of privacy for intersex students.
Yeah, they think this bill could do more harm than good and end up impacting, a lot of girls and women, including intersex individuals.
Okay.
It's complicated.
It is.
It's definitely complicated.
Yeah. We've got people saying it's essential for fairness, others saying it's discriminatory, and now we're hearing how it could impact intersex girls as well.
It's a lot to unpack.
It is.
And we're just getting started.
Right. This is just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
There's a lot more to consider here.
There is. So we've heard from people who say this bill is like, crucial for fairness and sports, and then others who say it's like a direct attack on trans rights. But this goes way beyond just opinions.
Yeah.
This is getting into serious legal territory.
Yeah, and InterSCT is taking it a step further. They're saying HR 28 might actually be unconstitutional.
Right. They're making a pretty strong argument, and it all comes down to the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, which, guarantees equal protection under the law for all citizens.
So they're saying that singling out trans athletes just based on their biological sex at birth, that could go against that right to equal protection.
Exactly. They're saying by focusing only on reproductive biology and genetics at birth, the bill is creating a system where certain students, mainly trans and intersex individuals, they're denied the same opportunities as others based on, nothing but their biology.
So the question isn't just whether trans athletes have some kind of advantage.
Right.
It's about whether the government can legally say a whole group of students can't play school sports because of their biology.
That's what it comes down to. And they believe HR 28 is unfairly targeting a group of students who are already vulnerable and creating a system that's inherently unequal.
And this isn't just theoretical. If this bill actually becomes law, it could end up in court pretty quickly.
Oh, yeah. Legal experts are already saying that lawsuits challenging HR 28's constitutionality are pretty much inevitable.
Which means the courts would have to deal with some really complex and sensitive issues.
Absolutely. They'd be forced to answer questions like, does this bill violate the Equal Protection Clause? Does it go against the whole point of Title IX? And how do we balance the rights of trans athletes with concerns about fairness for women's sports? There's no easy answer.
This could become a legal battle that goes all the way to the Supreme Court.
It's definitely a possibility. The stakes are really high. People feel strongly about this on both sides, and it's all happening as part of this much bigger cultural and legal conversation about trans rights and the role of gender in society.
And it's not just happening at the federal level, right?
No, not at all. We're seeing this play out all over the country. States have already passed or are considering passing similar laws that restrict trans athletes from playing sports that align with their gender identity.
So it's like we have this patchwork of laws and policies across the country.
Right.
It's just making an already complex issue even more complex.
Exactly. It puts schools and athletic organizations in a tough spot.
Yeah, they're caught in the middle, trying to follow these laws that keep changing, while also trying to make things inclusive and supportive for all students.
It's a tough balance to strike, for sure.
So we've got these legal challenges, different rules in different states, and just a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah, a lot of uncertainty.
And we have to remember this is all about real people, real students whose lives are being impacted by these decisions.
That's a really important point. It's easy to get caught up in the legal arguments and the politics,
Yeah.
but we can't forget that there are real human stories behind all of this.
We're not talking about some abstract concept. We're talking about Kids who just want to play sports, be part of a team, feel accepted for who they are.
Right. Their experiences, their voices need to be part of this conversation.
So we've looked at the bill itself, the arguments for and against it, the legal challenges, and the bigger picture. Where do we go from here? What's the next chapter in this story?
Well, the Senate has the ball in their court now.
Okay, so the House has spoken, but now the Senate gets to decide whether H.R. 28 actually becomes law.
And right now, it's really hard to say what they'll do.
Yeah, with that close vote in the House and, all the different viewpoints in the Senate, it's tough to predict what will happen.
There are a few possibilities. They could pass the bill as is, they could change it, or they could just reject it completely.
And I bet the political pressure is going to be huge. Lobbying groups, public opinion, all of that's going to factor into their decision.
It's not just a legal fight, it's a political fight too. And whatever happens is going to have a big impact on trans athletes and the whole conversation about trans rights in our society.
Feels like we're all kind of waiting with bated breath to see what happens.
Yeah, it's a big moment in this debate, and as it unfolds, we'll be here to break it down for you.
Okay, so we've laid the groundwork, but this is just the beginning.
Yeah, we've just scratched the surface.
Now we need to go deeper.
Right into the heart of this debate. What does it mean for us as a society? What values are really at stake here?
Okay, so we've really gone through H.R. 28, the actual words, the arguments for and against it. But this is so much bigger than just like a law or a political thing.
Absolutely. It's about people values, how we as a society define fairness and inclusion.
Those are some really big questions.
Yeah.
And there are no easy answers?
No, not at all. It requires us to really think critically, you know, listen to different perspectives, grapple with these really complex issues of gender and identity.
So as we kind of wrap up this exploration of all the stuff you sent us, what do you think this whole debate says about where we are as a society right now?
I think it shows we're at this really important turning point when it comes to transgender rights and inclusion. I mean, this debate about athletes is just one piece of a much bigger conversation about how we understand gender, in the 21st century.
Yeah, on one hand, we're seeing more acceptance of trans people. There's this push for equality, for recognizing their rights.
Right.
But then there's this clash, too. Some people holding on to these traditional ideas about gender and biology.
Yeah, and H.R. 28, it's right in the middle of this clash. It's become this symbol of this struggle, this flashpoint for these really deeply held beliefs.
And no matter what happens with this specific bill, the impact of this whole debate is going to be felt way beyond sports.
Absolutely.
It's going to shape how we approach these kinds of issues in other areas like education, healthcare, jobs.
Right. It's going to influence how trans people are treated and respected, how we think about fairness, opportunity, and how we build a society that's truly inclusive.
So the stakes are high. It's not just about who gets to play on what team.
Right. It's about the kind of world we want to live in, the values we prioritize, the future we're building.
And as we try to figure out these really complex questions, I think it's important to remember that there's no one solution that will work for everyone.
Right. There are valid concerns on both sides.
Concerns about fairness in women's sports and concerns about the well-being and inclusion of trans kids. We have to acknowledge both.
Exactly. Finding a path forward, it requires empathy, understanding, real listening, hearing each other out.
It requires us to go beyond these simple solutions, and have these conversations even if they're difficult.
Right. We can't just shut down the conversation because it's hard.
Because at the end of the day, this is about real people.
Absolutely.
Real lives. We owe it to each other to approach this with compassion and respect.
Well said. So as we leave you to think about all of this, we want to leave you with a final thought, something to ponder.
Something that wasn't directly stated in what you sent us, but something that's really important.
Does focusing only on these biological differences, these physical characteristics, does it miss the bigger picture of gender identity?
Does it oversimplify something that really needs a much deeper understanding?
That's the question we all need to wrestle with.
Yeah, and we encourage you to keep exploring this issue, keep learning, keep listening to different perspectives.
This debate about H.R. 28, it's just one chapter in a much longer story, and we're still writing it.
We hope looking at all this information has given you what you need to be a part of this conversation, to engage with it in a thoughtful way.
With an open mind.
Yeah, and if you found this helpful, please like and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes.
Thanks for listening.